Hi, Bruce Jones, and welcome to a hot and steamy Tuesday afternoon. And this broadcast, this live Facebook Live, is going to be about creating a travel book. And I have this idea for doing some a little series called Books Uncovered, where I go behind the scenes on some of my books and break them down and how I did them. So this is sort of the first test of that, and I had been thinking about this for a while, but it's sparked this today. Just decided to go ahead and just jump in. That's the best way to do it sometimes, is just jump in. And so we had a great question that showed up, and I'm just going to read the question, and then we'll dive into the book. It says, I would like to learn how to do internal design of a book. I just finished writing a travel journey experience book. Editing is done and finishing to walk through the next steps. So that was the question that said, oh, let's just go ahead and dive in and do this. So there we are. So we're going to do it. So what I'm going to show you is a book that I did. I never published it, but I created it, and I just didn't get around to publishing it because it was just more work than I felt like doing. But it's a good example of a travel book, and I can take you behind the scenes and show you how I created this book. And just make sure everything is up live here. Yeah, it is. Anybody questions? Just jump in. And so this was a book that was created from a trip that I did across the United States. So in 2016, we sold our house and we went on a cross-country trip, primarily following the Lewis and Clark Trail, starting in St. Louis and went all the way to the Pacific Ocean, all the way up through the Missouri River, followed the Missouri River, and through Montana and Idaho and all those kind of places. So we went to all the way along, then down the Pacific coast, down to LA, and then back up, and then back across the United States through Montana, through Upper Michigan, and all that. So this is the book that resulted from that. And this was done from, let me show you where this was done from. So this, let me just make sure I have everything here so you can see it. I won't show all these pieces yet. We'll bring them out in a moment. So what I did on the trip was I kept a log of the entire trip and posted it on a blog. So every day as I did the trip, you can see here's all kinds of pictures from the trip, and I kept a diary basically of the trip. So I was able to do this from wherever I was, using my phone, using my computer, and wrote down and put pictures up that I took either with an iPhone or an iPad, and kept all of these pictures. So anybody can do this if you're going on a trip, is just document the trips. We've done actually a couple trips in here, but you can see it just kind of goes on, and different things that we saw. There was the trip that we went on. You'll see that in a moment. And here's ones from Tetons. And we went to all kinds of national parks and all different places. Here's us coming back into Massachusetts. And so this is a great way to do it, because you're compiling the text, you're compiling all the pictures. These are the low-res versions of the pictures. And then you might have some links. I had put in here resources from the trip. These are just the different books that I was using, travel lessons, things that I was learning along the way, that all things that would eventually come back and be put into the blog and put into the book. So that was just sort of the basis behind the scenes of how I where I collected all the information. So let's go. What we're going to do is we'll come out of this for a second, and now we're going to just put up, let me just go to here. So then what I did is I took the book. Let's just kind of go to here, Let's get the application. I'm going to get the InDesign up. Hold on, we'll just get this up here. All right, lots of pieces. All right, here we go. Here it is, right here. So I compiled them when I came back. Let's make sure we have that. Yep, there it is. And you can now see the book that resulted from it. So this was done. So this is a book that I put together. Let's just sort of downsize this a little bit so I can see everything that I'm doing. All right, there we go. So this is a book that was put together from a template for Blurb. So Blurb is like KDP and like Lulu. It's another site for print on demand, and you can do photo books in there. And so what I did is I downloaded the InDesign template. Let me just make this bigger so you can see it a little bit better. So I downloaded the InDesign template. This whole book was done in InDesign. And when I got home, I pulled off all the text from the blog and the pictures. So I now had everything sort of in order, with the right text, the right pictures, the right place. I knew where they came from. So that's half the job of doing a project like this, is keeping things organized. Where is everything in here? And I did this in InDesign. This is an oversized book. Only Blurb can print a book like this, and it's sort of a coffee table book. Intent was to give it to Blurb. I just never got that far. I actually just printed it at Staples. So I think I've just printed 2 copies of it. But I'm going to go through this in a moment and show you kind of how I set this up. As you can see, it's all in here every day from our trip, all the different pictures. I added some captions in here. At the back of the book, I put lessons and things that I learned from traveling. And we kind of built this whole book out of it. So let me show you what that looks like now. All right, so here is the book in InDesign. And so this was set up as sort of an oversized book, but I'm going to show you just sort of how to set this up a little bit in InDesign using KDP. So they don't have this size, but they have other sizes. And you'll notice the book is in here. And what I'm going to do is just turn on the grid underneath. So one of the keys of doing a book like this is that you have to, I think, come up with a simple grid. I've talked about the grid and some other things. And you'll notice that there's a grid under here. And it's really a 4-column grid. And sometimes I make it 8 columns, but it tells me where to put the pictures. So let's just kind of go in here. And I don't have to always follow them, but I kind of know where things are going. So it tells me kind of where to place things. You'll notice here I can line things up. This would go in this column. This is really two columns wide, even though it looks like 4. You just make that 1. Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can mix and match your columns, but it gives you a reference of where to put the pieces. So you notice I have them in here. And it helps keep things lined up and gives this book an internal sort of grid that runs underneath everything. So things like this, where the 2 top photos are half the size of the bottom photo. Right? So they kind of fall into that spot. Text has a place that it's going to fall. It just makes things easier to put together. You notice I've just sort of, it's all in here. And it just all compiles. And you just basically, I took the text, dropped it into place, however it was, dropped the pictures into place, and put this together. Now, these were low-res images. And I used the low res because I was just going to photocopy it and eventually was going to replace them with the high res images. But just to keep this thing manageable and kind of get it done, I just used the low res images. And eventually I just printed it at Staples. I also, if you notice, put color underneath everything. Several white pages. There's color underneath. You see that little yellow? That could be, you could switch that around and put different colors on different pages. But it all just kind of flows out and just makes your book. And have large photos, small photos. You want to mix it up into lots of different things, but it's really just a linear tale of the trip that we went on. You can see here's Fort Phil Kearny. Whoops, where'd it go? We had a huge rainstorm right here. We were caught in a rainstorm. There's Gettysburg. So we really just drove across the country. One of the things that's nice on a travel book is to put a map. All right, so this is the map that I put together. I just showed, so I got a map and just showed the path. This is the going out path is the red. That's the Lewis and Clark Trail. And then the coming back is the blue. We drove about 12,000 miles in the entire trip. All right. And that kind of goes like that. And just title it. So that's really the book. That's basically how we did it. So anybody can put a book like this together. A nice size for a travel book, I think, is a 10 by 8.5 by 8.5. The square size can work really well in InDesign or on Amazon KDP. And there we go. So, all right, it is getting hot, and I think I am going to go to this, and we'll come back later and do it again when it's a little bit cooler because it is toasty. All right, bye. Oh my God.